Kia ora, g'day, welcome back once again, here with part 3 of my reaction to this tracking of the Bondi terrorists or the terrorist shooters. So let's jump back in.
Have Australians been told the real story about what happened?
What they said doesn't match what I knew about the situation.
ASIO declined an interview, but in its statement to Four Corners about claims the Akrams embraced violent extremism in 2019, it said the claims were found to be unsubstantiated. The ABC's source claimed Naveed Akram said and did things that were actually said and done by an entirely different person. Four Corners' source misidentified Naveed Akram, and therefore the associated claims are untrue.
Wow. I can understand ASIO not jumping on the camera and giving an interview. I don't know that that's part of their practice that they would be doing, but it just highlights, and I mentioned this in, I think, the second reaction, maybe it was the first, that these groups positioned and placed, no doubt, all over the world in Western countries they just seem to have all the time that they want. They can take their time and prepare and strike when it's least expected. And when you go through and apparently these claims were looked into and found to be unsubstantiated, I would assume that they've gone and had conversations, that they've conducted maybe some surveillance prior to pulling somebody in for an interview or interviews, or maybe they just did surveillance and didn't do any sort of questioning, and maybe they didn't find anything. I suppose the groups that are involved in this sort of stuff, especially on foreign soil, they're away from their home country or where they're born, and they're in another country. Maybe not necessarily. Sometimes, obviously they're going around and recruiting and radicalizing people that may actually have been born and raised in that country, but have cultural ties and ethnicity to where these groups have come from. Man, it makes it hard, very, very hard for authorities, for intelligence. They must be working around the clock to try to nail down and get as much evidence, I suppose, substantiated evidence that they can use to take action. Because I'm no lawyer, like I've mentioned, but clearly there's a lot of legal red tape that they would need to go through in order to make sure that they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's. So I can't even pretend to imagine what that must be like, and the rigor around that stuff, which is intended and designed to protect us, the population and the country in which you work and serve. But at the same time, I guess there's benefits to it for those bad actors who come and take advantage of those sorts of things. Four Corners source misidentified Naveed Akram, and therefore the associated claims are untrue. Wow.
ASIO said, having reviewed all available intelligence, it stands by its assessment at that point in time. Marcus provided a response saying he strongly denies ASIO's allegation that he ever misidentified Naveed Akram, someone he met on a regular face-to-face basis over many years.
Yeah, I find that hard to believe, if ASIO's saying that he's misidentified. Like, you've had this agent with your agency for however long he's been there for, and he's, firsthand met with Naveed multiple times over a long period of time or over years. So I don't know how the misidentification comes into play.
This regrettable allegation is false and unsubstantiated.
It's very significant that an undercover operative tasked by ASIO has come forward to give this information, and I'm sure that ASIO will go back and look at intelligence we've provided to make sure that their assessment was the right one and what lessons could be learned. But I should emphasize that threat changes and morphs and moves all the time. So the fact that an assessment was made against Naveed Akram a few years ago and he was assessed as not a current imminent threat does not mean that he couldn't have become one later. So that's why it's vitally important. It's not a one-off investigation into a radicalized individual.
Yeah, solid. Like, he summed that up nicely, Things can shift and move all the time. It's no different to conflict, no different to war, no different to what's going on in the world at the moment. But hearing this guy speak about the agent, I wanted to laugh, actually. I was thinking, yeah, no more security clearance for that guy. More than likely the guy that was the agent that's come out and challenged ASIO's response to Four Corners about the allegations and being unsubstantiated, and his affirming, I suppose, his claim that the information that he gave was true and correct at the time. Sounds like Marcus, the agent, is saying Naveed Akram poses a genuine threat, imminent threat at this time, and ASIO has looked at it and said what they said. I misidentified, unsubstantiated, and so they didn't act on it, or they chose not to progress it any further.
Despite concluding that Naveed Akram did not adhere to or intend to engage in violent extremism, ASIO recognised he could still go on to become a terrorist. Through the Joint Counter-Terrorism Team, the 18-year-old was added to a New South Wales Police intelligence database called the Known Entity Management System.
Well, that's good. So sounds like they didn't get rid of, didn't remove him off the books, which would have been a surprise if they did. They've just shifted him onto another part, I suppose, in the process, in the pipeline. But, it's easy to look back and say, could this have been prevented? I think I might have mentioned this in maybe the first or the second reaction. Probably almost anything could be prevented in hindsight, eh? So looking at it from that perspective may not be that helpful. But look, this is just my opinion here. But maybe looking at it from the perspective of what could we learn from, how did we manage that information, that intelligence that came through, what were some of the signs and signals that were being presented? If that could be done honestly, doesn't need to be transparently broadcast out into the public, I don't think anyway. If there were mistakes made, just as long as they've taken ownership of them and gone, frickin' heck, we messed up big time here, and it caused this is what we need to do, and this is what we can do, this is what we've identified in terms of how we can go about rectifying that would be awesome. I don't sit back and expect to know and see and hear what ASIO is doing or any other intelligence organization. I don't think that's my right to know, and I think most of the population probably feels the same way. Don't get me wrong, there's some nosy people all around the place that would probably want to know. Would I want to know? That's a different question. Yeah, I'd be curious. But yeah, as far as things being broadcast and around processes and what they do, and whatever their lessons learned for continuous improvement is in that department, in those areas, hopefully it's robust, and hopefully it serves the purpose that they can learn from the tragedy of what's happened and taken place at Bondi.
Potential extremists. He was no longer on the list by the time of the attack.
We're also told that New South Wales Police did an interview. It is a little difficult to see how people could subsequently say that that they didn't pose a risk and they were taken off the radar. Not impossible, but unusual. They're just questions, given the gravity of this massacre, need to be asked by an independent person.
New South Wales Police declined to respond to our questions due to ongoing investigations and inquiries. In June 2020, 2 months after ASIO concluded its investigation into Naveed Akram, his father applied to New South Wales Police for a firearms licence. Around the same time, Naveed reportedly trained with a local hunting club. He also worked as a bricklayer. New South Wales Police were banning associates of the El Matari cell from obtaining guns, while Marcus monitored the network.
There were several attempts to smuggle weapons from overseas. Another one, buying weapons in Australia. First option they discussed is if they can get weapons legally. In case they couldn't find this, they will go underground to find a weapon illegally.
New South Wales Police told a tribunal they suspected the terror cell was looking for a clean skin, a person with no criminal record who could legally acquire firearms without alerting law enforcement.
Sajid Akram was allowed to continue to apply for his gun licence, even though he lived in the same house as Naveed, who'd associated with members of the cell.
How does that happen? He's applied to New South Wales, is it New South Wales Police? I don't know. He's applied anyway. It's landed on their desk at some point. They've said that they might want to get clean skins, is what they've referred to potential people as, who can acquire firearms without alerting or setting off a radar. The dad is living with the son who's on the radar, or maybe they've been taken off the radar now, and is applying. And subsequently, I think from one of the snippets that I saw from the actual attack that took place, the dad was able to legally acquire 5 or 6 firearms. So, man, massive red flags as you look at it. Like as I look and listen to this in hindsight, oh, red flag, red flag. But I would have thought somebody in that police department, especially if this name is a person of interest who they've spoken to, who is living in the same home. Well, clearly his son is living in the same home and is associating with known potential threats. You would think that that would be an automatic no.
We know from court documentation that concerns had been raised about the cell and their efforts to try and find somebody who might be able to obtain a firearms licence. One of the things that will likely come to light through the Richardson Review or through the Royal Commission is exactly how it is that didn't, sort of lift the concerns that were associated with the Akrams.
So here we tell the brothers and we
Marcus claims the Akrams attended Wissam Haddad's Al Medina Dawa Centre over several years, despite their earlier promise to disengage. ASIO didn't say whether it received such intelligence. Haddad has said no evidence has been produced showing any personal, organisational or instructional link with Naveed Akram. While Marcus was gathering intelligence, ASIO was in the midst of a major shift.
I think I just missed something there. I'm going to go back and listen to that again.
Sort of lift the concerns that were associated with the Akrams.
So here we tell the brothers and we
Marcus claims the Akrams attended Wissam Haddad's Al Medina Dawa Centre over several years, despite their earlier promise to disengage. ASIO didn't say whether it received such intelligence. Haddad has said no evidence has been produced showing any personal, organisational or instructional link with Naveed Akram.
Far out. So ASIO saying they haven't said anything about whether or not they received any intelligence or evidence. And then this Haddad ballbag person is talking about, very smart, no evidence has been produced showing any personal, organisational, instructional link between Naveed Akram and Wissam Haddad. Smart, man. They got, like I said, they got time. Take their time with it. Groom and blink and radicalise people over long periods of time. It's not something that, I don't think anyway, that happens instantly. It's something that takes time to develop, the relationship to build, the trust. And far out, if that is what's been happening, and the agent Marcus was a part of that and was there and saw them attending these things, and if that information was being fed back to ASIO and still nothing took place, no intervention was planned for, it sort of makes me sit here and wonder, are there sleeper agents in the organisation itself, in ASIO? It's not, I don't think it's outside the scope of reality in terms of the world that we live in these days. But man, it's just sad, man. So many lives lost in that attack, and seems like, as I listen to this, that there have been breadcrumbs laid along the trail for over a long period of time, whereby you'd think that would have and or could have, and in this case should have, in hindsight, triggered an action by the police, by the federal police, by ASIO, by whatever law enforcement to grab these guys or shut down this ball bag right here. It's mad.
While Marcus was gathering intelligence, ASIO was in the midst of a major shift. In 2022, ASIO chief Mike Burgess announced terrorism was no longer the highest priority and he was moving resources to other threats.
Espionage and foreign interference threats are outpacing terrorism threats and therefore demand more attention and more resources.
ASIO lowered Australia's terrorism threat level.
The number of cases that we are investigating has moderated. Terrorism.
It's tough, eh? Finances, resources, people power, etc., etc. Like, again, just bide your time. They could just bide their time, make it seem like everything's all sunshine and roses, and then bang, blink, and you get smacked right in the nose with the Bondi attack, terror attack. Hard one, man. I mean, I wish I had the answers to it, but my take for, Australia, New Zealand, even US, UK, Canada, I personally don't think any of those countries can, could, or should be lowering their terror threat potential for their country. Yeah, that's just my honest take. Given, I suppose, the coalition and the Five Eyes alliance between those nations that I just mentioned, and the fact that they do proactively work together and in support of one another, you can't. I don't think it's smart, and I don't think it's wise to think that the terror threat is no longer there, or that it doesn't warrant the same amounts, if not more, resources committed to monitoring the situation constantly. That's just my take anyway. How you do that, though, you need money, you need the right people, just to name two things: technology, collaboration between those, the interagencies, and internationally and nationally. It's just, yeah, I don't have the answers for it, but sad to hear that that's what happened. I'd be curious to know what their position is now in Australia in terms of terror threat, and have they bumped that back up, or have they still put it at a lower level and still focusing on espionage and other things rather than terrorism threats?
Remains a priority for my organisation, and it will get the full resources it needs. And remain resources.
What's that?
ASIO lowered Australia's terrorism threat level.
The number of cases that we are investigating has moderated. Terrorism remains a priority for my organisation, and it will get the full resources it needs.
ISIS.
Okay, that doesn't really answer the question. Remains a priority, so that's cool. I get it, and so that answers that point of keeping it there. Mine was more around not lowering it, and that it will get the full resources. That could mean anything. Get the full resources in relation to where it sits in that hierarchy of priority. So if terrorism is no longer at the top of that hierarchy, then it, in my own brain, it makes sense that the resources allocated to it would be proportionate to where it sits in that hierarchy, if that makes sense. So the higher level is going to get, the pick of the crop, so to speak, the pick of the bunch, and the lower level, although priority threats, are going to get the other level of resources and response.
This was diminished but reviving, according to the Home Affairs boss who oversaw ASIO at the time.
I think it was fair to say that by 2022, we were alert to them. There was certainly no complacency at all, because we could see what they were trying to do. They'd lost their physical base, so they were trying to inspire, pushing out messages, trying to get people to ideate and turn, for instance, hatred of Jews or hatred of the West or hatred of the promiscuity, say, in the West, and turn that into violence.
ASIO shifted their priorities and concerns. They became less interested in focusing on jihadism and Islamist extremists, and they became less interested in our work and information. From 2022, my
Big claim, saying that they became disinterested. I'm not saying it's not true, but yeah, that's a big statement to say that you're Australian Security and Intelligence Organisation for your country has decided or are now disinterested in the intelligence that you're providing, particularly if you think there's validity to it and there's potential for threat and violence in the community or against a certain race of people. Man.
The previous officers were moved to work on other aspects, and they were replaced by new officers, unqualified, new graduate. Some of them, they didn't know most important names of ISIS leaders, like Abu Muhammad al-Adnani. So that, yes, 100% that affected our work on stopping terrorism and possible terror attack.
Wow. Who makes that call, eh? It sounds like they've just grabbed some juniors that have come through and gone, yep, you're assigned to this task now. And I suppose that's sort of to my comment earlier. It's not a point, eh? To my comment, to my own thoughts, me spitballing here, as I watch and listen to this in regards to that hierarchy and the resources and the type of resources being allocated based on where the potential threat or the risk sits on that totem pole of the hierarchy for counterterrorism in this space versus espionage versus trafficking versus drugs versus whatever else might have been on their lists of priority. When you're using the term terrorism, it's moderated at this time, and so you're lowering the level. To me, straight off the bat, it doesn't sound like they're going to get much resourcing. And if that's what this guy Marcus said they encountered, they've now got new graduates not up to play, not up to speed with the history that's been built up over several years, not up to speed on who the characters are. Did they take the time to read any previous reports or the intel to try to get up to speed? Yeah, it stands to reason how things could have been overlooked, missed, and how the ball could have literally been dropped as it was being handballed or passed on to a junior or a group of juniors coming into that space. Anyway, I'm going to park this one here. Just lots in it, man. I think I needed to go back a couple of times. Apologies for that because I missed some stuff as I was trying to listen. But appreciate your time and you putting up with me rambling on. So anyway, I'll leave this one here. I'll come back and hopefully I'll get through the last reaction or the next reaction in one go. If not, I'll be breaking it up again. But thanks for stopping by. Thanks for sharing your comments and thoughts. It is heartbreaking in terms of what's happened here. And going back and looking at this in hindsight or listening to the investigation, which has been done by ABC Four Corners, take it for what it's worth in terms of ABC News. Yeah, we're not gonna solve it here, not through my reaction, not through their documentary, but hopefully people that need to see this and people that need to maybe take stuff away from here, if it's true, can act on it in a way that helps improve and reduce the potential for something like this to happen again. So anyway, that's that, eh? Regardless of your challenges and trials, man, the message is always the same. Keep turning up, keep staying in the fight, put one foot in front of the other, take one day at a time. Know and trust that things can do and will get better if you want them to. But sometimes it sucks, eh? And sometimes it's miserable for a long period of time. And so if you want things to get better, I can tell you from experience, they can, they do, and they will, but you do have to want it. The sun will shine again. There are better days ahead, and those better days are always closer than you and I think. So just stick at it. There is a light at the end of that tunnel. That being said, as always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, there is a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all.